What's up, guys? Another week of the character design journey. So we're gonna jump right into this one. So last week I showed you the process for doing a turnaround on the main character of this world that I'm creating, the space pizza delivery. And this week we're making his manager. And for his manager, I was trying to go for like an alien concept because he's in space, and this guy, the main character, is a human, and I felt like, you know, you need to have some aliens in here if you're gonna have something in space, right? Like, that'd be kind of boring without it, probably. And I was thinking of what sort of like creature on Earth is representative of that like idea that I get when I think of like a crummy manager, like somebody who isn't exactly like, you know, not the best manager ever. He's like a kind of slimy, kind of unappealing, you know, maybe a little dirty, maybe a little smelly, I don't know. So I was torn between a cockroach and a slug, and I wound up going with the slug. The cockroach thing, I tried doing a couple and it just wasn't even working out at all. With the slug, you're gonna be seeing me go from concepting based on simple shapes to a finished product. So let's jump into it. I'm also going to start this video by saying that I am working on the 2018 iPad with the Apple Pencil on the Clip Studio Paint app. Both Clip Studio and Procreate are fantastic apps. Clip Studio just seems to have a few more professional features that I need for my workflow, especially when it comes to things like setting up guides and brush smoothing. And you can see from this first slug, it was very, very similar to how a slug probably looks in real life. You can see I did a little, on the bottom there, you can see I did a little study of a real slug for reference. And that's another thing, doing reference for anything that you're going to be making a character on before you actually go to do that character can help you a lot. It just gets your brain familiar with the basic shapes of that creature or person or whoever. With this, I started off by just scribbling random shapes on my canvas, and now I'm filling those shapes in with the features that I feel that this slug character should have. So I gave him an apron to represent the pizza place that they'd be working at. I really wanted to give them all kind of a scowl. If you look angry, it's kind of off-putting, and I wanted this character to be off-putting. I tried for a while experimenting with their little antennae. Because they have like antennas like up here, and then they also have some that sprout off like a mustache, and I felt that that would be really cool. So it's most likely, you know, it would be like an Italian stereotype or just like, you know, that sort of thing. But I wound up scrapping that in the final product. Like, I thought it was an interesting idea, but it wound up being something that it didn't give the right feel that I was looking for. And now we're moving on to this one that's a little more round. He seems a little too almost on the friendly side, and I didn't want him to seem very friendly at all. And this one is definitely an inverted shape. He's a lot more top heavy than the other ones are, and he looks almost a little more stuck up, like he'd be fancy. And I didn't really want him to have the fancy vibe either. I want him to be kind of crummy and just kind of off-putting. Those are really only the two features that I was looking for this character to have. But going through these shapes is definitely a great exercise. Just even if you're practicing character design in general, you can do this on a daily basis with characters you don't even plan on continuing further. It can just be something to exercise your brain every day. It's just a fantastic exercise. I noticed when I put a lot of the rounder shapes on these characters, it made them have more of like an aloof feel, or like more of an innocent feel. And once again, that's something I'm not really going for. I'm going for an off-putting, crummy character. So definitely the more round shapes you have, it seems that it makes them more innocent or peaceful seeming, which makes sense because circles in nature are a lot more peaceful, and we associate them a lot more with cute things or gentle things, whereas triangles and squares could be a little more assertive or a little more scary. Now, this character on the right is the character we ultimately wind up going with. He goes through several changes throughout the process. So right now, this is him in his most basic form. And one of the techniques that I really like to implement when I'm designing characters is, once I get a character that I feel is really appealing and is really what I'm shooting for, I take the layer that I originally drew them on, minimize it to a really low level, and I'll draw over it again. And then I'll take that drawing and I'll minimize the opacity on that, draw over that again. I'll do that several times, maybe even like 6, 7, 10 times, however many it takes, till I feel that the character is pushed to the level where I feel like, okay, I've pushed it as much as I want to, and now I have all of these different steps to explore. You'll see towards the end of this video, the way the character looks right now is very different from the way he looks at the end of the video. Right now he's a little more round, and like I said earlier, the round shapes kind of convey more peaceful archetype, and I really wasn't looking for that at all. So you can see me going in here again, minimizing that layer, minimizing the opacity of that layer, drawing over it again, and I believe I do this like 3 or 4 times for this character, and I can't emphasize enough how vital this is to my process, because if you have a layer where the opacity is like all the way up and you're trying to push the shapes farther and farther, you're gonna keep doubting yourself, because you kind of like, oh, I like this character, I like the way he looks, and I don't want to mess it up and I don't want to push it too much. But when you lower the opacity of that layer and you draw above it, you're never gonna be able to see everything you drew before, so you'll never just be tracing. You'll almost be guessing at certain areas. So you're like, oh, I think I made this mark here. You'll make that mark, and it won't be exactly the same. It might be a little more exaggerated, it might be a little more understated, but it will be different every time, and it'll push the character in different directions, and you'll have this entire spectrum to choose from when you're finally satisfied with the amount of output that you've made. And we're gonna speed through this just for a minute, because it's just covering the topic that I was just talking about, where I'm pushing these shapes and making several layers and pushing them in different directions. So let's skip ahead a little bit. And here I hit a point where I was thinking to make the character bigger than the main character, like taller and like more robust. And to do that, I made the eyes really small. I wound up scrapping this character, but I felt like it was worth mentioning. When you're making a character that's supposed to be very, very large, keeping the eyes also large, most of the time can make that feel incorrect. So if you make those eyes nice and small while you're making the character big, it really gives them like that big overarching feeling. That's just a little side thing. And here I wound up looking up I couldn't think of what colors to make this character. I was kind of having a little bit of a dry spell up in the old brain. So I just literally typed in gross colors on Google, and I just went on Google Images, screenshotted that, and imported it over onto my Clip Studio document, and just copied and pasted those colors in where I felt they should go. And after doing this, I liked where the colors were going, but they were a little too saturated. I even asked my girlfriend for input, and she said, yeah, this character kind of looks like it belongs in the Fairly OddParents universe because of these colors and how saturated it is. And I couldn't help but see that after she mentioned it. So asking for feedback is another thing that really, really helps all the time. Speaking of feedback, if you guys are enjoying this video, make sure to like and sub and all that stuff. Selling myself out over. And I really appreciate feedback on videos like this. So if there's anything that you guys are seeing in my stuff that you like or don't like, it's always appreciated. Then I corrected those colors a little bit just by using a tone shift in my Clip Studio app. So all I did was I reduced the saturation a little bit, and then I also did a little bit of a color balance. And that seemed to even things out nicely enough. It brought down that saturation, and it also just gave a nice blending to the colors, and it felt a lot more where I wanted it to be in terms of matching to the main character and seeming alien as well. And then we just went in with the line art. So before that, it was just rough lines, and then we went in with a stabilized brush and just started smoothly going over those lines, making sure to keep the exaggerations that I put in place as close as I could get it. And then after the lines are filled in, all I did was use the paint bucket tool and start dropping in color, almost like a coloring book. And then the final details were added just by taking the outline of a color and then filling that with the paint bucket tool as well, because if you notice, the small features on the main character are also not, they're not outlined, they are just blobs of color. And I wanted to keep that as a design element because keeping design elements, even as small as those, across different characters really lends itself to keeping every character in the same universe and the same design style. And that is it, guys. So that is where we are with this character right now. Our main character is Crummy Manager at his pizza place job in space. So I really hope you guys like it. And I was thinking about next week either doing an expression sheet of this Crummy Boss character or a turnaround. So if you guys would want to leave your feedback and let me know which one you'd like to see, I'd really appreciate it. Maybe that will affect my decision. So guys, I hope you liked this video. And if you did, make sure to leave a like and sub and all that stuff. And I will see you next time. What was that? Thanks, guys.